You just want me to say what people say about me.
Weird question, I guess.
My teacher says you'll grow out of it. It's just a phase.
It was never a phase. I never grew out of it.
I guess I'm too reckless, I don't know.
People like to talk very loudly to me.
They say I don't think things through.
You're looking still good for your age.
I'll figure it out when I'm older.
You are having a senior moment.
When the focus is on my age,
Life seems to get a little bit harder.
It feels like I'm not given a chance.
I need to keep up.
Or get out of the way.
I lack experience.
Or too much experience.
I'm baggage.
Only weighing people down.
Looking at my age,
Like it is a disease.
where I work, no one takes me seriously.
It makes me feel powerless.
And it hurts.
When people see only my age.
Welcome to our event, kicking off a global conversation on ageism with the launch of the UN Global Report on Ageism. My name is Claire Dool and I'm your moderator. And thank you to the thousands, literally thousands of people who are joining us from all over the world today, from the private sector, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and individuals who are just curious and interested to know, how do we reduce ageism? As you saw in the film, ageism affects older people and younger people too. So joining the conversation today, we have Rosario Diaz-Caravito, a youth activist from Peru, who is going to share her experience of ageism. We have Ida Makuko Nambeya from Zambia, an advocate for older women in sub-Saharan Africa and connected to families affected by HIV/AIDS. We have Hannah and Benji Ingram Moore, who are going to share the story of their relation as grandson and daughter of Sir Captain Tom, who really inspired the UK and many people around the world with his fundraising activities, resilience, and much, much more that Hannah and Benji are going to tell you about. We also have Klemen Ponnikva, who is the Deputy Permanent Representative to Slovenia to the UN here in Geneva, and previously was in New York. And he has really been a leading voice in the policy fora on ageism. It's a conversation. So please, please do start posting questions. That's in the Q&A box. And also, if you think that a question is really good, just vote it up with a small thumb icon that you see next to the question. Some of those questions we might actually be answering in writing, so please do that. And if you want to go into the chat, you can also see that there's more details about our amazing speakers, short little bios. So do put your questions in there. We're going to take as many as possible. And of course, tweet using the hashtag A World for All Ages. So with no further ado, then let's look at how ageism does play out in people's lives. Rosario, could you tell us about your experience professionally and personally of ageism?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Of course, ageism doesn't affect me only on my personal and professional life. I want to share you two different experiences. First one, it will be whenever I was applying to a job recently, because I just finished my master's degree and I was having the support of a consultant to help me to organize my documents and so on. And something that stuck on my mind was whenever she saw me when we did the webcam thing, and she said, "Rosie, you look very young. And at some point, you need to look different. You need to look older so people can also relate that with the experience you have. You have a great CV, but you look too young." And I know that perhaps she was not saying that with a bad intention, but definitely it's something that we struggle a lot. I have a young face, I'm 32, but still I look younger. And that is something that sometimes we need to think whether we need to change how do we look so we can be taken in count or in consideration. As an activist, definitely I have different kind of experiences, but some of the ones that I want to share with you is that with the millennials movement, we do activism and we try to work with people on the territories in the Latin American and Caribbean region. But most of the times, because we are a youth organization, we as an organization and we as people we have been stereotyped. And how does it work? We are being stereotyped as you are the social media people, you are the people who carry out, or like not to carry out even, to only, serve as volunteers for certain projects and so on, whenever we have the capacity not only to mobilize, to also implement, but also to organize, to create, to manage data, to do many things, and even build a partnership strategy that can take us forward on the different actions we have or we want to take. And that is not the only thing. At some point, as a youth activist, as a youth leader organization, we have to take ageism as one of the risks or something that we need to be prepared of to struggle with every single time we want to interact in our society. How does it work? For instance, we went to visit a government official, and the first meeting we were accompanied by an older person, and the person, the government official who was listening to us, was very respectful. He was very open. He was very eager to work with us. Next meeting, unfortunately, this person couldn't go with us, and we were not heard. This person was not polite at all, and even questioned the real reasons why we wanted to work with them. And then you see the difference whenever you have to have someone older in order to back up the work you are doing. And definitely, this is something that now we take as part of our risk assessment, something that we are prepared for and we plan ahead for, but it's not necessarily how it's supposed to be. So young people, through our lives, we struggle with ageism, not only in our work life, but in our personal life. Claire, the floor is yours. Thank you for this time to allow me to share my experience.
Yeah, thank you, Rosario. And indeed, I mean, that's appalling that you have to do a risk assessment and you anticipate ageism as a younger person. Well, now let's bring into the conversation Ida, who is an advocate for older people, and she's a counselor for the Stephen Lewis Foundation, which has a Grandmother for Grandmothers campaign that's going. So Ida, tell us about perhaps one of the grandmothers that this foundation and you have supported.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the WHO for this opportunity and all protocols observed. My speech is focusing on ageism in the context of older women in Africa. In my experience, older women have been neglected and they lack the support that they need because of their age. They are seen as useless, as of no use, despite their contribution to development. They are the ones that have been taking care of the orphan vulnerable children and even their sick children as they are dying. They are used as scapegoats if things go wrong. Whenever their children contract HIV and they die, they are blamed for that. They are called all sorts of names. And to put all these things in a context, I want to give one example of many of the examples that I've come across in my work with the Stephen Lewis Foundation. A woman named Margaret, who is from Western Kenya in Kisumu. She had 5 children and she lost all the 5 children to AIDS. She was left to take care of the 7 orphaned vulnerable children. She also lost her husband and she was given another husband as a way of inheritance. Even the second husband died. She was called a witch in the community. No one wanted her. They wanted her to die like tomorrow. She was blamed. She was isolated. She was discriminated. She was stigmatized. Nobody wanted to visit her. Nobody wanted to check her, despite the service that she was providing of taking care of the orphaned vulnerable children. She also fell sick because she was HIV positive, and she was so sick, and her grandchildren came to her aid. After the grandchildren saw that she was really sick and she was dying, they are the people who went to the community-based organization and told them our grandmother is dying, because for the orphans, that was their father and their mother, because their parents had died. And so Margaret was taken to the hospital. She became better. She was back to the community. She joined the support group for the grandmothers, and she became happy. She was now a leader. She became a leader for her community. Everyone now was looking at Margaret. And so when we look at that, we see such a resource that was almost dying because of because of the stereotypes that were around within the communities. And so what is happening here is remarkable. People do not talk about ageism, but ageism is real. And so we need to respect the older persons, and they need to be recognized for their contributions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ida, for that very compelling testimony of the work of the Stephen Lewis Foundation, and in fact, the difference that you made to the life of Margaret, and in fact, to many of the women that you support. So in fact, that's really the question, what can be done? How can we find strategies? Well, in the UN Global Report, there are many strategies. It also talks about the prevalence of ageism, the impact on individual and society. And somebody who knows all about that is Alana Margaret, who's the head of the WHO's unit on demographic change and healthy aging. So Alana, please tell us some of the findings of this report.
Thank you very much, Claire. So first, what I'd like to know is, have any of you actually ever felt or been told that you are too young or too old to be or to do something? Age is in fact one of the first characteristics, along with our gender and race, that we tend to notice about other people when we interact with them. It is one of the main aspects also on which we categorize people. Ageism is or refers to how we think, so stereotypes, how we feel, our prejudice, and how we act, discrimination, towards others and or ourselves based on age. We are not born ageist, but it starts early and it reinforces over time. Children as young as 4 are aware of their own culture's age stereotypes and prejudice. And then these stereotypes are internalized and they are used to guide our feelings and our behavior towards people of different ages and towards ourselves. But ageism takes different forms across the life course. It's very likely that you have experienced at some time, like Ida and Rosario, ageism. You may have been ridiculed or made fun of because of your age. You may have been denied access to healthcare because of your age. You may have been denied a job because of your age. And the report found that ageism is in fact everywhere. 1 in 2 people, or half of the world's population, have moderate or high ageist attitudes against older people. And those rates are much higher in low and middle income countries. The report tells us that You are more likely to be ageist against older persons if you're younger, if you're male, if you fear dying, and if you're less educated. You are more likely to experience ageism if you're older, if you're care dependent, if you happen to live in a country where healthy life expectancy is much lower, or you're working in one of the sectors such as high tech or hospitality. For younger people, unfortunately, we have much less data. But in Europe, which is the only region for which data is available on all age groups, younger people report more age discrimination than other age groups. Being female means you are more likely to be a target of ageism against younger people. You may ask, is ageism harmful? It is both harmful and it is costly. Ageism is associated with earlier death, poorer physical and mental health, including the onset of depression. It's associated with social isolation and loneliness, taking more risks with our health, such as eating an unhealthy diet, drinking or smoking, and poorer quality of life. But ageism doesn't only affect us as individuals. Ageism devalues or limits our ability to benefit from what both younger and older persons can contribute. It erodes the solidarity between our generations and has serious economic consequences for individuals and for society. Ageism is harmful in itself, but it also exacerbates other forms of disadvantage related to sex, race, and disability. But the overarching message of the report is really optimistic. We can combat ageism. There are 3 strategies that work in reducing or eliminating it: policy and law, educational activities, and intergenerational interventions. Policy and law can address discrimination and inequality on the basis of age and protect human rights of everyone, everywhere, at all ages. Educational activities can enhance our empathy, dispel misconceptions around different age groups, and reduce the prejudice by providing more accurate information and some counter-stereotypical examples. Intergenerational interventions bring people together from different generations and can help reduce the intergroup prejudice and stereotypes. These, in fact, are some of the most effective interventions to reduce ageism against older people, and they're showing great promise for reducing ageism also against younger people. Where possible, the report advocates that these 3 evidence-based interventions are implemented together to maximize impact. The report has 3 recommendations that we can use and must use to end ageism. We need to implement and scale the 3 evidence-based strategies that prevent and tackle ageism. We need to improve our data and research to gain a much better understanding of ageism and how to reduce it, particularly in low and middle income countries. And we need to change the narrative to create much more positive and more accurate narratives. Culture is fluid. Look at the change that women have experienced in the past decade. To conclude, ageism affects us all. Ageism is everywhere. Ageism is incredibly harmful to our health, to our well-being, and to our economies. But ageism can be combated, and we all have a role to play in challenging and eliminating it. Join the movement to create a world for all ages. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilana, and indeed for outlining those strategies. While you've been talking, we've just been getting so many questions in. I'm going to ask a few questions to the speakers who've just spoken, and then we're going to move on to Clement and Hannah and Benji. So Rosario, there's a question for you. I think we could have a whole conversation about that. I don't want to editorialize, but just a very quick answer, if I may. The question for you, Rosario, is, do you think you've been a subject to age or gender discrimination, or both? Would you think a man gets credit for being successful early, but women not? Very important question. Can you give us a short answer on that one?
Definitely, and I've been in that position, being young and a woman. It's hard, and I've been in position in the position where younger men can even say the same that you're saying, or can take more credit for different ideas that you are also saying, but you are discredited, or not discredited, but not taken into consideration during a different conversation, or when you participate in a space. So definitely being young and a woman is a double stereotype process, and very harmful, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosario. And in fact, there's quite a lot of questions about gender discrimination that are coming in, and we'll put some other ones in a moment. But there's a question here, which is how to explain that until now, ageism has been less a concern than racism, sexism, and gender discrimination. And I just wanted to bring in Clemen into the discussion, because that seems that policy and law, one of the suggestions of the UN Global Report, is really important. And I know that in Slovenia, back in 2016, you did adopt an anti-discrimination law. So perhaps if you can answer the question, but also tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in Slovenia to try and reduce ageism.
Thank you very much, Claire. Well, first of all, I mean, I would really like to thank for the invitation to this event. It's a truly great event and an amazing report that has been launched today. First of all, maybe a little bit in relation to this question. I mean, we've been, talking about cross-cutting nature of these discriminations for quite some time already in international fora. So there has been a lot of conversations, but the question is why are these questions not held in public, or why publicly we're not discussing this as much as we should. Look, we have extensive legislation that deals with guaranteeing equal rights, including preventing ageism. Maybe constitution to start with, the most fundamental one, or going to the recent ones, the one that you have just mentioned, the Protection Against Discrimination Act, which established the advocate of principle of equality. And I would like to talk a little bit more about this body, maybe. This is an independent and autonomous state body mandated to deal with discrimination. And the advocate was mandated to offer counseling and legal assistance in administrative and judicial proceedings. And among others, also tasked to conduct independent research on the position of people in certain circumstances, particularly also concerning their age, publishing independent reports and making recommendations. And I really don't want to be too technical in the things that I'm describing now as a representative of a country. So I was thinking I could offer two concrete examples of what the advocate does. The first example would be, for example, his response to the latest so-called Corona legislation that was adopted in Slovenia. And he found that in some cases, this legislation basically predicted early retirements, and the body looked at this issue and recognized that the law is not in accordance with the constitution due to the fact that it's targeting certain people on their age. And this was also something that was recognized by the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court withheld the aforementioned law. So it was a very concrete thing that happened. And in another instance, the advocate also looked into another legislation that was adopted recently on personal assistance, and it also concluded that it's again there's ageism or age discrimination involved in it, because the law was basically accommodating persons between 18 and 65, and leaving out many others. So what I would really like to say is, this body that we have now has enabled us to have conversations that we haven't had in the past. We are a country that tries to do as much as we can in order to respect everyone's rights. But it's very important that we grow and that we address issues that are coming up all along. So this is what I think is really important in relation to this legislation. Back to you, Claire.
Thank you, Clement. I'm going to take one more question, and this is for Alana, and it's one that's got a lot of voting on it. But Alana, let's see what you can do with this one, which is the UN revisiting its mandatory retirement age policy?
Claire, at the moment, we're just launching this report today. There is no change today in UN mandatory retirement ages. Let's see what happens in the future.
That's a conversation for later. Let me now bring in Benji and Hannah Ingram Moore, who are as I said in the beginning, the grandson and daughter of Sir Captain Tom Moore, who you may have been aware raised, I think it was £38.9 million for charity by doing laps of your garden. Unfortunately, he passed away last month, and Benji, you gave a beautiful eulogy at that funeral, where you said that your grandfather really helped you become the person that you are today. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Firstly, thank you so much for your kind words. That was a really difficult day because of what I'm about to allude to. So I had the incredible opportunity of living with my grandfather, Captain Sir Tom, since I was 3 years old. And to put that into context, I'm now 17. Living with that different generation gave me a whole new outlook on life that I don't believe I would have had before that. We have a shed up in the back of the garden that's called Grandad's Fix-It Shed. I now take DT for A-level. I truly don't believe I would be doing that without having sat in that workshop for hours with him. And that is the different generation. I believe our generation is stereotyped to be one very much in technology. I'm probably not looking at that more arts and crafts way, but having an outlook from him was incredibly important. Hearing the war stories from when he was in World War II gives you a complete new outlook on life that we just haven't experienced in our generation. So living with him was the most incredible thing for me, and most certainly he shaped the person I am, absolutely.
Benji, tell us, what do you think that you learned from him, and what did he learn from you, perhaps in terms of qualities and outlook on life?
I think for me, what I learned from him was to hold your values very dear to you. The values for respect and the values for looking around at the beauty that we see everywhere. We, as I said before, we very easily get locked inside onto our phones. But what he taught me was we have to look outwards. We have to see the respect in people. We have to learn from mistakes. And that is truly what I believe I learned from him, from living with him. And from my side, I think I taught him technology, which was so important to him. It gave him a new purpose for sure. He absolutely loved it. He was 100 years old but had an iPad and an iPhone, and he was on it all the time. So whenever that broke, he would come to my sister or myself, and that was so beneficial for him because he wouldn't have had that at 100.
Benji, tell me, who came up with that great idea of your grandfather doing 100 laps or 50 laps? You tell me how many laps he did of your garden.
Well, to start from the beginning, really, this was the first weekend of COVID-19 in the UK. It was very difficult. We are a normal family, to put that straight. We set no campaign to start with. But my granddad was just walking up and down the garden looking to rehab after he broke his hip a year before. And my father said, I'll give you £1 a lap until your 100th birthday, which was at the end of the month. And then amazingly, my mum said, well, why don't we start raising money for the NHS COVID appeal? Because that was a huge thing for us, especially in the UK. And it kind of just grew from there. I took the social media side of it. My mum set out a small press release. And so organically, it grew and it grew to be where we are today and have the opportunity to be on this call and speak to everyone. It was the most amazing 3 weeks where, as you said, we raised 38.9 million, including gift aid. And it was probably the best experience of my life.
Absolutely. And you mentioned your mum there, Hannah. Hannah, you really started this, didn't you? This intergenerational contact by inviting Captain Tom to come and live with you. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that and how important it is, you think, the role of parents to facilitate this intergenerational contact.
Thank you, Claire, and hello, everybody. This is just a phenomenal opportunity, I think, to highlight ageism and the positive impact we can have if we invest in older people and we recognize them for the wealth of experience that they have. So for our story, my mother sadly died in 2006 and it left my father widowed, and he was in his 80s then. And my husband and I were moving to set up our own business, and we really understood that with a new business and young children, the reality was that we wouldn't be able to get back to see him as often as we had. So I went to see him and I said, look, we really don't want to leave you here on your own, and we want you to come, please come with us. And he didn't feel lonely, by the way. He wasn't that type of man. But our feeling was that it was okay to not feel lonely in that minute, but what happened in the next 5 years or 10 years? So I think he actually thought quite hard about the potential to lose his independence. But we sat and talked about it, and we really begged him to come. And he said yes, and we were thrilled. And we didn't honestly think about what that made us. We felt that it was just what we wanted to do. So we walked through the doors of this house as a 4 then. It was before Georgia was born. We've been a 3 and a 1, and we walked through the doors as a 4. And I just can't tell you it's hard to explain the magic that happened, because we all drifted into this multi-generational existence where we just, because we did, lent on each other. And we suddenly became part of this magical reciprocal mentoring process where we looked up and we looked down and we looked at this incredible respect. We respected his independence. We respected his values. We respected everything he stood for, and he did the same for us. And what happened is our values became immersed together. And so never did anyone, once he was in this setting, say, oh, he's a bit old and past it, isn't he? Because what happened to him, he became invested in. He had purpose. Every day of his life, he stepped out knowing that we were behind him, and he had his own life and his own values, and he had his own purpose. He was interviewed on Appears More Than Life Stories and asked about how he felt becoming part of this multi-generational family. And he said it was the best thing he ever did. Actually makes us really emotional, because we did it because we loved him, not because we thought about the impact. But all I can tell you is the investment, that small investment of living together, I think it gave him life, it gave him purpose, it gave him joy. And because of that, when my husband said, hey, Tom, keep walking, we'll give you £1 a lap till your 100th birthday. And I went, oh, let's not do £100, let's make it 1,000. He went, great. And because of our multi-generational magical existence, look what happened. Because we were there, right there as Team Tom, as he set about walking. We didn't mean to do it. We really didn't mean to do it. And within 3.5 weeks, £38.9 million, and people from 163 countries donated, only 32 didn't. And we just had this incredible gift and of talking to the world. But with that comes a powerful responsibility that sits across the family shoulders. One of those responsibilities is to conquer the myth of age. And we hold it really closely as if it's gold dust in our hand. And we want to shatter that barrier of ageism. We hope we can just help a little bit.
Thank you very, very much, Hannah. And just to go back to Benji, you had the great fortune to spend such a long time with your grandfather, as Hannah says, this really multi-generational connection. Does that happen with your friends? Do you think that it should happen? There should be more contact?
I think, sadly, I speak to a lot of my friends who don't only see their grandparents, once or twice a year. And I truly think that is a massive disadvantage. You listen to how I've grown up, how my sister grown up, and it's a whole different world. You learn so many different aspects. And I really implore young people to think about their grandparents as their mentors, as their friends, because they can teach you so much that you would have no idea about. So even if it's a letter, a FaceTime, or going around to the house, it is so important. And absolutely, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. And Ida, I know that you were telling me earlier when I spoke to you that it's great that when the grandmothers and the grandchildren get together, because they also learn skills from each other. What sort of things have you seen the grandmothers learn from the grandchildren and the grandchildren learn from the grandmothers?
First and foremost, the story that I shared in Kenya, I think you heard that those children depended on the grandmother. So the minute they saw that their grandmother was dying, they didn't just see the grandmother as the parent, they saw the grandmother as a friend who was also going to die and they're going to miss that person. And that was the reason why they had to rush to ask for support for their grandmother. But we've also seen that the friendship that has become between the grandmothers and the grandchildren is so much that there's been openness, such that the grandmothers are ready to hear what their grandchildren are saying, because the grandmothers, most of them, have never even stepped in school, but these grandchildren have been to school. So what the grandchildren are bringing to their grandmothers, the grandmothers are ready to hear, and the grandmothers are also ready to share. So there's that bond, there's that friendship that has already been created, and so much is happening in terms of support for one another and acceptance in terms of age. And so this is what we've seen in the work that we've done with the Stephen Lewis Foundation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ida. And Rosario, it's sort of important, isn't it, to standardize this, that there are these connections that are not just made organically, like in the wonderful story of Hannah and Benji, but there are programs that bring the generations together. What have you seen in your context?
Well, definitely within the millennials movement, we have tried to move the youth agenda, but also we have tried to get in partnership with other organizations that are from adults, also with children. So we try to collaborate between us in order to go forward, but having a better input, learning from each other. Actually, some of the things that we have been working on is how the young people now is been following up some even international processes as part of wider mechanisms where we have to interact with the group of women, with the group of older people, and so on, group of indigenous. So this experience of engaging with other groups and sharing our opinions whenever we can have more horizontal spaces to talk and to be considered, I think it's better, because now we have an intergenerational approach that can be applied in recommendations, that can be applied whenever we have a declaration, whenever we are making a document or having a speech with, for instance, member states or other stakeholders. So definitely that's something great that we have experienced as activists, as part of a youth leader organization, because at some point it's so frustrating, because you realize that at some point you can be there, but you are invisible, that you are not there. So having these relationships, having these partnerships, having these conversations, then you start working all together, and they understand you, where you're coming from, and then you understand them, where they are coming from. And that's, I guess, a very good way to start changing these dynamics. And as many people mentioned on the chat, work in other affairs such as race, such as sex, and other different challenges or factors that perhaps can lead people to discriminate others. So
Absolutely.
definitely it's great.
There's so many things to do. Rosario, I just want to bring in the audience because there are so many questions. There's going to be so many conversations that we need to have on this. There is a conversation, and I'm looking at the one right at the beginning. There's a comment here which somebody says that global champions and ambassadors, celebrities would help to challenge ageism. There is one here, I don't know who would like to take this on. I perhaps throw it to Clemen here, who says, it is common to see schools for children, youth and adults, but why don't we have schools, especially for older people of 60 plus age? What happened to our rights to education and training? That's one that's got a lot of votes for. Clemen, your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, for example, in Slovenia, we do have courses for older persons. For example, there's a university, we call it University for Third Life Cycle or something like that. And it's you know, public project that basically is inviting to everyone, and everyone can participate in it. So I think, you know, there are bits and pieces around the globe that are doing something about it, but we could of course coordinate a little bit better and have that present across the world.
There's also a question here that perhaps Clemen, you might like to try, or Alana. It's from Ken Bluestone, who says, one of the most powerful tools of UN member states have at their disposal is creating a UN Convention on the Rights of Older People. This would help reframe the narrative on aging, create the greater legal certainty necessary for addressing systemic ageism, and provide guidance to governments and all actors. Most importantly, it would be universal for all older people everywhere. Do you agree that drafting a convention should start now? Clemen.
Yeah, speaking just now about coordinating on things around the world. Definitely, I mean, we've been one of the most vocal voices in support of a convention, or we say basically we should discuss what kind of an internationally binding treaty or instrument should be invoked for something like that. And in terms of the time, I think it's it's been timely for quite some time already, but especially going through the period of COVID in the last year, I think it has become even more apparent that something needs to be done. And yes, I think that the time is now, but it's very important, you know, to have a common approach and a common understanding on how we move ahead among member states of the United Nations. So we are always looking forward to these type of discussions. And one is just about to start or to happen in New York, the open-ended working group on aging. So we're hoping, you know, that we could move forward also in a forum like that one.
Ida, what is your view on this initiative for a global convention on older people?
I think it's something that really needs to be supported because we've seen it in our work where grandmothers themselves, older persons, have been forced somehow to go to school to be able to achieve their goals. And so this is something that is welcome. I'll give you an example of one woman in Mozambique who lost both of her children and wanted to go to school and become a carpenter. She was 78 years old. And when she went to school, she was being laughed at. People were saying she was too old. How is she going to wear a work suit? And she said, I'll wear a work suit and a wrapper on top. All I want is to get the education. But she was one of the best students, and she set up her own company after graduating. And so really, this is something that we need to support. And we've seen more and more in our work, some who have been able to just go to school, the grandmothers, because they want to talk to their grandchildren, and their grandchildren, when they come, they want to teach their grandmothers how to write names, and their grandmothers have been forced to say, oh, let me go back to school. And we are seeing this more and more happening in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ida. Alana, your thoughts on this global convention? And of course, earlier I was mentioning this idea of having celebrities as champions. What's your view?
So I think the report shows very clearly that ageism is at the root of so many challenges that older people experience and younger people as well. And really the basis for the denial of human rights, the enjoyment of human rights across age groups. So I think that makes a strong case for countries to really consider very seriously the nature of an international treaty that can support the realization and enjoyment of the rights of people of all ages, and specifically in the case we're talking about, in the rights of older persons. I wanted to get the question you asked about champions. It's a good one. There are increasingly people speaking out, certainly older women who have faced ageism starting to speak out, whether that be Glenn Close or Isabella Allende. But I think ageism is a real barrier itself to people wanting to take up the issue and champion it. And I think that we need both younger and older advocates. Ageism affects people of all ages, and we need younger and older men and women, younger and older persons with disabilities, people from different ethnic backgrounds, to be speaking out on this issue. It affects everyone.
I've got a great question here, and I'm going to take a risk because time is not our friend here, but I'm going to ask each of the panelists to be really, really short on this one, okay? But it's a great question, which is from Janice in the UK. Oh, no, I've lost that one, but actually, if I can I remember it? What I remember is the question was something about how do we get herd immunity, a term that we've become very, very knowledgeable of because of the pandemic. How do we get herd immunity against ageism? Okay, that's the question. Ida, a couple of words to each of you. How do we get herd immunity against ageism? Ida, in a sentence.
Not clear with the question. Claire, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, really it's saying, how do we get everybody to realize that we have to reduce and prevent ageism?
I think this is the issue of working together. People have to work together towards combating ageism. Because when this is happening, it's hurting the communities. And so when we work together to combat it, then we are creating health communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ida. I'm not sure whether we lost you for a moment. I'm going to ask Clement, Rosario, Benji, and Hannah very, very briefly. How do we get herd immunity, i.e. how do we reduce ageism in a sentence? Clement.
I think the WHO with its partners did a really good job. And I think I would say basically collecting the right evidence so that we understand better the issue and we're able to respond to it. But I would say intergenerational cooperation is one really good way to deal with this.
Rosario?
I would say, let's think, this is also a personal task. Let's think every single time we have felt insecure, we have felt outside, or we have felt that we don't fit on somewhere because we heard something about our age. Let's think about that and let's bring that conversation to the table with our families, with our social groups, in our organizations. Let's take it to the public agenda and let's be sure that doesn't happen with other people. And whenever we speak, let's also be aware of what we are saying, because perhaps we have naturalized this so much that we are also contributing to the problem, but now we have to be the solution. Thank you very much, Claire.
I think from my side, I'd say a massive key is mutual respect. learning from each other's experiences in different generations and becoming more well-rounded people as a result of it. Because each generation has different stereotypes attached to it, and we all have different experiences. So mutual respect, learning from each other, and then going out united as different generations together, I think that's really important.
And for me, very quickly, it's showcasing the benefits of multi-generational living. Look at the positive impact. We show you a live example.
Absolutely. Well, I really would now like to bring in somebody who knows a lot about this. Dr. Vania de la Fuente Núñez is one of the two lead authors of the report and technical officer in the Demographic Change and Healthy Aging Unit at the WHO, and has lots of ideas on how different groups can keep this conversation going. So Vania, over to you.
Thank you so much, Claire. What a wonderful conversation we just had about ageism here today. But we don't want it to end here. We want the conversation to continue in our homes with our families and friends, in our schools with our students and teachers, in our workplaces with our colleagues and employers, and also in policymaking spheres. To help you continue this conversation, we have developed a very rich toolkit that is available in English, French, and Spanish, and which includes a series of resources that range from conversation guides with key questions to help you spark those discussions with anyone everywhere. It also includes an event guide to help you prepare your own events on ageism, as well as presentation slides that you can use in your own events. This toolkit also includes infographics with the key messages from the Global Report on Ageism, as well as a social media guide that includes a wide range of assets for you to help get the word out there using the hashtag #AWorldForAllAges. The toolkit also includes interactive stickers and a filter that you can use on Instagram to really help you spark those conversations among friends and help challenge everyone's attitudes towards age and aging. You will be able to access the toolkit in the chat, so the link to the toolkit will be made available to you. What I just showed now was a short preview. But beyond the toolkit, we would also love to have you join us in the Facebook Live that we're going to be having here at WHO next Thursday, 25th of March at 3 p.m. CET time, where we will be able to continue this conversation and also answer live any questions that you may still have about ageism. Conversations are like drops of water. Just as one drop of water can create countless ripples, one conversation can have countless effects on the people involved in that conversation and their networks. We really look forward to seeing the rippling effects of the conversation that we just started here today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Vania. And indeed, we've got some great comments in the chat and many questions that we are answering in writing. And there's one, Ida, from Sarah Campbell. She says, it's incredibly powerful what you're describing, but also devastating. And it seems that ageism is only part of the problem and that an intersectional approach is needed. It appears that these women are experiencing misogyny as well as ageism. Would you agree with that, Ida?
I seem not to be getting your questions clearly. I don't know there's a problem in the
Okay. What I was saying was that there was a lady who was saying thank you for describing so powerfully what your organization is doing, and saying that it seems to be an intersectional approach and that there's a lot of misogyny involved as well. Do you hear me now, Ida?
Okay. Not really.
That's a great shame. So all I can say to people is please check out the Stephen Lewis Foundation and you'll see some of the great work that the Grandmother for Grandmothers campaign and Ida does. So thank you for that. We've also got other questions coming in and thoughts. Let me read a few of them for you. Until and unless we can create a society where the life of every individual is respected, we will all suffer. Ageism is a state of mind, and as such, that's where we need to start the transformation with education. So thank you very much for that. Edward says the world needs a powerful anti-ageism movement. So thank you again for that comment. Tracy, ageism is the enabler of the abuse of older adults, and when this prejudice is normalized in society, abusers can act with impunity. Ageism and sexism and racism intersect. We have so many questions here that are popping up in my screen. There's a question here, Alana, for you from Sharon Rose. How can this report make a difference in advertising to end the anti-aging creams, print, the social media ads with mostly young adults? How can we as a movement educate businesses that their target audiences include the 45+ audience who have the funds and jobs and are making a difference in our world? Alana, perhaps you would like to give some thoughts on that.
Great, thanks, Claire, and great question. I think increasingly as industry is aware of how damaging ageism is, they can also see, and that it doesn't make good business sense to be ageist, then they can see other opportunities in which they can still increase their bottom line, but support people to age well and not do that in a way that exacerbates ageism. So there are many companies now who realize that being ageist doesn't make good business sense. So I think increasingly you will see, we hope, also as a result of these conversations, which need to happen in businesses with industry as well, so that they can see the opportunities that exist in changing the narrative, in being part of the movement to end and prevent ageism. They have a really important role to play, and I know that many of them will take up that mantle.
Let me read a few of the other questions and comments that have come in. The Fundacio Quiero Activismo, apologize for my bad Spanish pronunciation there, which says, I appreciate WHO's efforts to break down ageism and advocate for healthy aging. However, in my region, especially in my country, Chile, it's almost impossible to speak of healthy aging thanks to the existing economic system. It's urgent to continue campaigning on ageism, but in parallel to raise awareness in countries about how ageism and healthy aging are intertwined. Indeed. And we've got comments from all over the world here. This is from the Commonwealth Association for the Aging, Common Age. Great to be with everyone at this important meeting. Could we invite all colleagues in Commonwealth countries to get in touch and support our campaign to challenge ageism across the Commonwealth? And you can find the details in the chat box. We are waiting for the Director General, Dr. Tedros, to join us. He is very, very keen to say some words to you. As you can imagine, he is a rather busy man at the moment, given what's going on in the world. So if our audience can stay with us for a couple of minutes, we hope that Dr. Tedros will join us. In the meantime, I'm going to carry on seeing what some of you have written and some of the questions that have come in. So there we are. Indeed, Tracy McDonald, ageism is the enabler for the abuse of older adults. And when this prejudice is normalized in society, abusers can act with impunity. Ageism and sexism and racism intersect in such societies to create sanction, disadvantage, and victim blaming. Awareness of this needs to be taught to young people so they can recognize it when they see it happening. Okay. We need to challenge ageism. We need to change the language we use. Alana, let me just come back to you again here. There's a comment on, can we work together to abolish the concept of retirement? It's an outdated 20th century concept. What do you say to that?
So, I mean, in many cultures and contexts, retirement isn't a possibility. It is also many people, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, will continue to work throughout their life course because there is no social security or systems that provide that opportunity for retirement. I think the question is not, do we or do we not want retirement, but are we able to choose? And is retirement something that is dictated to us on the basis of a characteristic, such as our age, or is it something that we can choose to do? And I think the question that we're addressing today is really when age is used as the sole criteria for which somebody may be denied a job, may be denied promotion, may be not offered training, or be asked to leave their workplace.
There's a comment here from Alexandra Lopez. It definitely becomes much more challenging when we realize that we're facing intersectionality when it comes to ageism. It's your age combined with your gender, your ethnic background, your nationality. As Alexandra says, it's a cluster of isms, and I can see that Rosario is agreeing there. So lots of thoughts. And from Patricia, again, tackling ageism and other stereotypes needs to start early. Educational policies should help infants and toddlers develop empathy and understand that others have different thoughts and feelings than they do. Between 18 and 24 months toddlers will be developing a theory of mind. This is when a toddler first realizes that just as he has his own thoughts, feelings, and goals, others have them too. The screen is playing havoc here today. Children probably won't be perfectly empathetic by the age of 3. This person says there are some teenagers and even adults who haven't mastered this skill completely. However, empathy is a complex skill and needs to be developed across a child's life. And perhaps that's an opportunity just for me to bring you in, Hannah, on empathy. Was that something that you naturally was, as a mother, able to transfer to your children? Because of course there's Benji, but there's also his sister, I understand too.
That's right, and I think that there's no question that along with the magic of multi-generational living comes some frustrations, right? So we had to walk through the door and learn to empathetically exist together. And that we had to show the children that my father had a voice and he had a place at the table, and that he had purpose and integrity, and that his values were important. And I can absolutely tell you that the children behave differently because of that interaction, because actually it was very rarely all about them. It was about, but wait, you know, as Benji and Georgia were small, but wait, let's think about Grandpa's needs, because actually his needs are more important at this moment in time than yours. And what that does is it engenders absolute empathy. And for me too, that I'm now living with my father again, but the relationship has changed. What does that mean? I have to be empathetic to his needs, but he also had to be empathetic to ours. So we went on an educational life journey together. And it's important to say it was not always perfect, but the end result was sensational. And the ripple effects of that multi-generational living are now out there in the ether of the world, because we did something together that could never have happened apart. And I think that's all about empathy and respecting each other's values.
So Benji, you obviously have a natural empathy, but do you think that this could be taught?
I think it can, because you look at our situation now, and it most certainly has been taught. Because we had to learn over living with each other for 13 years to respect what each other can and can't do, for examples. You learn what each other do on a daily basis, what activities you do, your life experiences, And most certainly you learn over time. And like my mum said, not all of it is easy. It'd be a myth to say that it was. But learning how to adjust to other people's needs gives you a whole new outlook on life, which I think is incredibly important.
And let me just ask you, Benji, because we heard, of course, from Ida, her experience of ageism, the grandmothers, their experience of ageism. Rosario, she started by telling us the ageism that she has experienced personally and professionally. Benji, very quickly, have you ever had any experience of ageism?
100%, comfortably, absolutely. Because as I said earlier, my generation, teenagers at the moment, are stereotyped to be locked into social media. And that's a very harmful stereotype to put on the whole generation. Because I'd say, for one, I limit the amount of time I'm on my technology extremely, because I learned from my grandfather that it's not all about your narrative. You have to look in the outside world. And there's definitely certain aspects of life where people look down on my generation because we spend too much time on technology. So absolutely.
Absolutely, really important. And just tell me, Benji, I know that you've set up a foundation. Do you really see that as your life's work and part of the legacy for Captain Tom?
So the Captain Tom Foundation is absolutely the legacy of my grandfather, and something that not just me, but the entire family holds incredibly dear, and something we will all be attached to our entire life. When a charity is named after someone who you've lived with for 13 years, who you love really dearly, and especially someone who has passed away, because it gives you another meaning. You want to continue that legacy in his name. You want to make it as powerful as possible. And that will be my goal forever, absolutely.
I would really like to thank all of our speakers for their such strong stories, some of them very, very disturbing. The story that Ida told us about the grandmothers who lose their land, they lose their inheritance rights, they're called witches, but thanks to your campaign, they are empowered and can become leaders. Clement, thank you again for giving us some idea of what can be done from the Slovenian idea. And of course, we've been discussing this idea of a UN convention for older people. Rosario, indeed, the work that the millennial movement does, and how you are trying to change policy at a national level, at a regional level, and also, of course, at the Sustainable Development Goal level. And of course, Benji and Hannah, for your inspirational stories and for the foundation that you've set up. Well, it's now my greatest pleasure to ask the Director General of the WHO, Dr. Tedros, to say a few words to close this event. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Apologies, I'm a bit late, but I didn't want to miss, and I was asking colleagues, please make sure that, I join them. Was very happy to be a granddaddy last October, so this matter is very important for me. So that's why, but I'm very fortunate. But at the same time, it's a personal issue and also, of course, an issue for all of us. And it has to be everybody's business, to address, the problem we're facing with ageism. So distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And thank you all for joining us for the launch of this very important report. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you for the whole of today's event, but I'm glad that I get to have the last word. As he approached his 100th birthday last year, Captain Tom Moore, sir, decided he would try to raise £1,000 for the United Kingdom's National Health Service by completing 100 laps of his garden. He ended up raising more than £30 million and received a knighthood for his service. I would like to thank Captain Tom's grandson, Benji, and his mom, Hannah, for joining our panel today. I had the honor of meeting Captain Tom virtually last year. I'm very sorry that you have now lost him. We lost him too, but I know that you're also very proud of who he was, and you should be. And we're very proud of him too. And I would like to thank all the other panel members who have joined us today. For me, Captain Sir Tom is a powerful demonstration that although older people are among those most at risk from COVID-19, they make incredible contributions to our society. But in some public discourse, a dangerous narrative has taken root that older people are frail, vulnerable, and dispensable because they would have died anyway. This is wrong. Conversely, young people have sometimes been vilified for recklessly and irresponsibly spreading the virus because they're supposedly invincible. These narratives are the latest manifestation of an old problem, ageism. Stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination based on age is not new. COVID-19 has unveiled just how widespread ageism is in our society. Ageism exists in our institutions, our relationships, and ourselves. It's so insidious and socially acceptable that it often goes unchallenged. But our age doesn't define us, just as our sex, race, and ability do not define us. Ageism is associated with premature death and poorer physical and mental health, including depression. It can also slow down recovery from disability and can lead to unhealthy eating, smoking, and lower quality of life. The negative effects of ageism on health and well-being are seen all over the world. The good news is we can do something to tackle ageism. The report we're launching today outlines strategies that are both feasible and affordable. We call on all countries to continue the conversation that has started today and to invest in these evidence-based strategies and to improve our data to learn more about how to prevent and reduce ageism. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that life and health are precious and that people of all ages are valuable. Thank you to all those involved in producing this report, especially the OHCHR, UNFPA, and DESA, and many wonderful colleagues here at WHO. I hope it will be a valuable resource as we work together for a world that values people of all ages, not only for what they can do, but for who they are. By the way, in terms of the elderly, just one thing I would like to share with you finally is I was really disappointed to hear one narrative some years ago saying to the elderly, labeling them as silver tsunami. But there is the other side, silver dividend. Like the youth, it could give you demographic dividend, or if you don't handle it properly, it could be a demographic bomb. So it's the way we handle it, whether you're young or old. If it's handled properly, and if the national policy actually identifies the elderly actually as productive as anyone, except you need to give them the areas that they can deliver on, they can continue until later age, continue to be a member, a productive member of the society. They can continue to contribute. And we have seen this many ways, except those who have some serious health problems. Even for the youth, the same thing. If there are no good national policies that can release the potential of the youth, you wouldn't get demographic dividend because you have a youth bulge. You can have instead a demographic bomb because you don't have the right policy to use that youth bulge that you have. So it's the way you use it. And many countries are showing now that, you know, if we have the right policies, don't expect silver tsunami. You expect silver dividend. They can still contribute to the society in big ways. They can continue to contribute to the society in big ways. So that's why I didn't want to miss this. I really believe that this is a very, very important agenda. Addressing it helps because there is a huge contribution that the elderly can continue to give, which can benefit our society. So thank you so much again. I'm very glad to join, even if it's last minute. I missed many of the things you have said. I'm sorry for that, meaning it's a loss for me. It would have been good if I listened to you and educated myself, but I will get from my colleagues the issues you have discussed and learn from it. Thank you so much again.
And thank you, Dr. Tedros, for your very valuable contribution. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our audience, and long may the conversation continue. But for now, goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.